Welcome to the Disconnection Podcast. My name is Kyle Nielsen, and I'm here with Ben Harmati, and we're your hosts for today's show. During this episode at Disconnection, we'll be speaking to Casey Mann, also Michael.
Yes.
So, Casey, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Casey Mann. I'm from, if you don't know, we're in Englewood, New Jersey right now. I'm from this area originally in a town over called Tenafly. But for the past 5 years and change, I've lived in Boston, Massachusetts. I planned on staying there for 6 months originally, and then 5 years later, I find myself still there. I work out there. I have 2 jobs right now. I'm back in school full time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. It's awesome, but it's like a thing. Like I work and I'm like, oh, you know what? I really didn't get the full school experience. I miss going to school, and then I'm back in school. I'm like, oh, I really want to be working full time.
Yeah.
So I found that the best balance for me right now where I'm at is to be working, almost full time, and then in school full time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm one of my jobs is actually more of a hobby. I'm in the cigar business. I'm a big cigar smoker, tobacco smoker in general. But basically I help with customer service. I help people pick out cigars based on what they've eaten that day or what mood they're in, whether they want something light, medium, or heavy. I know everything about the origins of the country that the tobacco is coming from, what flavors it's going to give you, and I help with I basically get paid to talk about cigars and smoke cigars. It's awesome.
Interesting.
And then I'm also, for the past 3.5 to 4 years, I'm in the more specifically, you could say mental health field, but more specifically substance abuse field, where nowadays I do freelance counseling, stuff like that. And then I'm in school also, which is, it's a lot. I try to not let it be overwhelming, but yeah, it's cool. I've been managing it well. That's basically my life on a day-to-day basis, right? Lots of cigars, talking to people, which I enjoy both thoroughly, and then going to school, being a full-time student.
I personally know that going to school full-time and working full-time is not the most convenient for any sort of social life.
It sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you got into this counseling?
Sure. So I got into counseling. All right, I'll start from the beginning.
Please, yeah.
Let's take it back to take your shoes off before walking inside my house.
Sure. Absolutely. I will.
Thank
I'll
you.
go through a lot of that. And so I'm going to do a lot of talking right now.
Please.
If you have any questions, if you have anything,
We'll stop. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. If you have any questions, if
We'll
you
chime
feel
in.
like,
Is that your phone?
Please.
That's me.
if you feel like if you don't understand something or I don't explain something correctly, feel free to just be like, hey, can you go over that again or explain
will.
it? Or okay, good. I'm just making sure because I'm about to rant probably.
Go for it, man.
Basically, I got into the field of counseling because I'll start by saying that my whole life I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt, my whole family, my mother, my brother, and my father, they're in advertising or marketing and sales of some sort, and I thought I was going to do that, right? It was an easy setup and an easy path that was set up for me. And my mom, being successful in her line of work, she was like, you can, as long as you have a college degree and you work hard and you're responsible, I can get you an interview anywhere and a job at a few places. And I was like, that's cool. But that's not really what I want to do. I felt a very irritable and restless and discontented feeling with everyone I interacted with, everyone I encountered, and I didn't feel like I was okay, and I didn't like who I was. When you're in that though, you don't know what to really call it, right? You just have this feeling of anxiety and uncomfortability, and I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what it was, especially at the age of 6.
Right.
I like to say the heart feels what the mind can't explain. So I felt these things that I couldn't explain, but I know it was there, right? I just knew it was there. And so I didn't know what I wanted out of life for a while. Growing up, I battled with like a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I saw close to 5 psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists, and I had to switch schools 3 times because I was had behavioral issues. I would start fights. I would call out often in class.
You win all those fights?
What'd you say?
With your tough hands, you win those fights?
Yeah, of course. My fingers, I just have to poke them and they fall over. But no, like I basically I was just a wreck my whole life. And I felt very uncomfortable and I didn't know where I was going. And I didn't like that. And you see, I'm a very methodical type of person where I like to know what's happening. But I've learned that I can make all these plans, right? I can make plans to drive somewhere and then arrive at a certain time. But there are factors. I'll hit traffic. Maybe, unfortunately, I'll get into an accident, and I can't predict those in the future. And then basically what I'm trying to say when I use that example is I made plans for my life. My life went the opposite way quickly than I ever thought it would. And I've learned that I can make all the plans I want based off of my desires, wants, and needs, but life's going to happen, and I have no control over it. And I am okay with that today. I try and go with the flow, like people say, and I have a lot of teachers of life, and one of my teachers say we try and wear life like a loose garment rather than a wet blanket, right? So a loose garment without attachment, letting things flow rather than holding on to everything tightly like a wet blanket. And I go on these rants and I veer off topic, but I'll get back.
No,
you're good. You're good. Yeah.
Throw in a couple of metaphors here and there.
Yeah.
I would actually like to focus more on, you just said your life, took a detour, let's say.
No, absolutely.
So let's solidify. What was the detour? When did it happen?
Like, just not to cut you off, but I remember like first meeting Casey. We were very young. It was towards the end of middle school or the beginning of high school.
Yeah, I was probably 14 at the time, beginning of high school.
And Casey was just like a kid-faced little dude who invited us to his house, and we eventually became friends with him. And he had these silly rules, and he'd make us leave the room when calling his mom. And we loved that. They were like very classic Casey things.
So true.
He was just the nicest kid, though, and we were always happy to hang out with him. But, I could see that you had this almost duplicity between who you were with us and how you interacted with your mom, for example. Like I always found this interesting. You'd change your voice on the phone to speak to your mom. You'd go into like proper voice,
I would. Absolutely. And everyone would be laughing around me while I was trying to keep a serious face. Absolutely.
Classic stuff. So why did you feel that you needed to be that person for your family at the time? And did you always feel like that you had to? So I'll answer that question and then I'll talk about more about my story of how I led up to being like that. There's one word one feeling that I feel that describes who I was for years, and that word is fear. I lived full of fear my whole life, and fear is part of the human condition, right? We all experience fear. It's okay to experience fear. We shouldn't. My experience shows I shouldn't let it control me. So when I let fear control me, right? Say I walk into this room and I say based off fear what I think you want to hear, right? I won't tell the truth, so I'll lie. So on the phone when I'm talking to my mother, like back in the day, I would say how I thought she wanted me to, speak. So I would speak to her like that. You guys specifically, right, our group of friends back in the day are really the only people who saw me for who I really was. And you said, right, I was like this lucky-go, silly dude who had a smile on his face, but I was a very emotional person too. Sure.
I'm sure you guys remember of me getting very angry.
I always felt that of you, that you had a deep emotion.
Right, I would get very angry very quickly. I haven't gotten angry like that in years. I try not to get angry like that anymore. I still get emotional, right?
You're human.
Feelings are going to come up, right? It's part of the human condition. But I recognize my emotions today, and I let them do whatever they need to do, whether it's cry or, be frustrated. But I don't let it control my actions, or I try not to let it control my actions. But yeah, fear would be the general answer to that word.
Interesting.
I just felt like I had to impress people. right? I want to look good in everyone's eyes, and I want to seem a certain way. And I still feel like that today, but I don't necessarily always act on that. I'm not perfect. I never will be. So sometimes I still do, but I always felt like I had to act on that fear. And quickly, for obviously the people not in the room, I did like a little mini meditation session. And usually in my meditation sessions, depending on where I'm at, right, I'll say different things. But the one thing I said before we started this was, let me speak from the heart with love and compassion rather than from the head with fear and ego. That's kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it a mantra or whatever, but that's like the saying I always go into.
It's definitely a mantra.
Right. Any situation where I'm talking about myself or stuff like that, or even if I get anxious, right? Like going into a date, sometimes I'll say that, right? Just speak from the heart, and I trust that.
I like the mantra, but I also the meditation before was honestly awesome. It was very cool. Casey's like, I need 60 seconds. Like 60 seconds for what? He's like, I'm meditating. I was like, all right. And we just all closed our eyes and shut the hell up for a minute. Yeah. And it was nice. I actually like that.
It is. I try and meditate on a daily basis every morning, and I have certain morning routines and nightly routines upon awakening and when I retire at night. Sometimes I'll meditate for 3 minutes. Sometimes if I'm really lucky, I'll meditate for like 20 minutes. It's not easy for me.
Do you find it as a way to like be able to get your thoughts in like an order? And, like...
Yeah, that's definitely it. Right, it centers me for whatever is going to come my way that day. And sometimes if I'm in a rush going to somewhere and I don't get to do it in the morning, I'll literally, I'll just pause throughout the day and take 30, 60 seconds to meditate or say something in my head, right, with my eyes closed, trying to relax, and deep controlled breathing. I'll go to the bathroom sometimes and do it if, I feel like I really need to.
Have you always meditated?
No, I got into meditation Meditation has been something that's suggested to me for the past 5 years. I've probably been doing it consistently for the past year, if I'm being honest. Like I've been doing it for 3 years now.
But
consistently every single day for the past year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Are you trying to clear your mind, or as you say, center yourself and kind of acknowledge what you're thinking, so there's that it's not you?
Totally. There's a lot of misconceptions about meditation and what it does for people, or I shouldn't say misconceptions. It does a lot of different things for different people. For me, I know I try and clear my mind so that I have part of that routine that I do, I pray. I pray every day. Sometimes it's twice a day. Sometimes it's a million times a day. I don't pray to, I'm not religious at all. I don't, I pray though. And some of them are formal prayers. Some of them are, most of them are personal prayers.
What's a prayer? Is that kind of like when you're saying you're praying, are you asking for someone for something? So
I do use the word God, right? I use the word God, but all I see God is the power of love. I don't think he's a guy in the sky and he'll cast you to hell if you do bad things, or you'll go to heaven if you do good things. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just my belief. I just believe in the power of love, right? That there is this power greater than myself, and it exists. I talked about earlier, the heart feels what the mind can't explain, right? And I know that power of love exists. A simple example, right? When I look into a baby's eyes, I can't describe what I'm feeling when I look into the baby's eyes, but I know there's that innocence and that love there, right? So I know that power is real. But that doesn't, I try not to think about it. Because if I think about it, I'll screw it up with my own ideas and my fears and my selfishness, right? I'll be like, oh no, it's this, oh no, it's that. People start wars over that, over that word God, right? People start wars
to conceptualize the feeling,
right?
Because we need to organize as humans. We need to understand everything around us.
Well, we feel like we need to.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily the truth.
Right, I'm with you on that.
Right, but people start wars over this word God. I try not to think about it, what it is. I just know that this word that I choose to call God is directly associated with the power of love. And I keep it that simple. So I pray to the power of love every day. I meditate on, right, love from the heart rather than fear and ego from the head. And it centers me. It gets me calm, but allows me to acknowledge my thoughts. And then over time now, because I've done it regularly, it quiets my mind so that when the right thoughts, right, and I'm using quotation marks, like right thoughts come, because that's relative, right? What people think is right. When the right thoughts come, though, from me praying, I can hear them. Because if my mind is quieted, I can hear the right thoughts. That's all. Because between the three of us, but between like everyone who's going to listen to this, if anyone listens to this, it's like,
well, we certainly hope they do.
Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have some insight, and it would be a benefit to anyone listening to take what our guest today, Casey, what you have to say.
Please. I appreciate that, though.
There's
Thank you.
applicable way that anybody can take this information for themselves.
To be informed and inspired.
Totally. No, I agree. I was just joking around.
Yeah, a little bit of a
or maybe I was speaking out of fear. Who knows?
Ooh.
But basically, yeah. I just want to quiet my mind so that when the right thoughts do come, I can hear them, and that's really my idea of why I pray and meditate, and so I can let this power, right? The power of love, let me think about it. But thinking about something can only get me so far, right? I can think about, okay, I need to go to the bathroom, like really badly.
Right now?
No, not
Okay.
literally, but I can have that thought, right? We have these thoughts, and I can think about going to the bathroom, but I'm still sitting in this chair. I haven't taken any action. I haven't moved my feet. I haven't gotten up. I haven't opened the door. I haven't walked down the hallway to go to the bathroom. It doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what I do, and I've learned that, right? I have these thoughts, but it matters what I do.
So
yeah.
It seems like you have a deep understanding of your own conscious mind. We're taking a step from a misunderstanding or a non-understanding in general to, I'm thinking these thoughts. That doesn't mean I have to act on them, or I will and plan to act on them.
Right.
And where did this stem from? Where are we coming
Right.
from that you took an analytical point on this?
Totally understand. And you've brought that up like a few times, and I keep going on these tangents and like ranting
cool.
off. But so perfect. I'm glad you said that. So right, I got into all these practices and I got into counseling, and I felt like basically I want to help people. After not knowing what I want to do on this earth for 21 years of my life, because of what I had gone through in my life. And I don't mean to sound so dramatic, but I'm 25 years old. Most 25-year-olds haven't gone through what I've gone through. And I put myself through all of it. I'm not saying like, oh, I have really hard life circumstances. I put myself through all the pain that I've ever had in my life.
Where was this pain coming from?
So, right, started when I first remember. The first memory I have of it was when I was 6 years old. I was full of fear. And I didn't know what it was called, right? I talked about I was restless and irritable, and I would start fights and call out, and I would need attention, and it was all about me, always. But basically, from the age 6 to 9, I would just call out. I would start fights. I had to switch schools from public school to private school, and I would get really upset. I had crippling anxiety. I was afraid of the dark. I had to do a routine every day. I'll tell you a story. One day, so my daily routine was I would wake up, I would shower, I'd brush my teeth, I'd eat breakfast, and then my mom would wave goodbye through the window. I'd go up with my housekeeper, this woman, this Filipino woman, Paz, who helped raise me. I'd go up to the window, and I'd wave to my mom. One day, my mom was running late, and she didn't wave at me. And the anxiety I experienced was that I felt the need I didn't literally feel the need to do what I did, but I did it because I was anxious and I didn't feel okay. I decided to shatter the windows in my living room. My mom didn't say bye to me that day, and I felt so uncomfortable with that. I banged on the windows till they broke. That's the type of anxiety I'm talking about, where I will do unexplainable things because I don't feel okay. There's something in the pit of my stomach that is telling me something is wrong, when in reality, my mom was right. In reality, the fact of the situation was my mom was running late that day.
Right.
That's it. It wasn't personal, but I felt like something was wrong. And I'm the type of individual, I don't deal with facts. I deal with feelings. today I try and deal with facts, but my whole life I've dealt with feelings. Doesn't matter the fact of the situation, right? I felt that way.
Did you
So,
have coping mechanisms for these feelings?
yeah, the coping mechanisms, right? I would do like deep breathing exercises. I was taught them at a very young age. I had this thing where I would hold my wrists tightly, and it would like calm me down.
I remember watching you do
Yep,
that
yep.
very often. Yeah.
I did that literally till the age of like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
From the age of like 9. I sucked my thumb till I was 8 years old. I had a blanket till I was like 10. And the most common coping mechanism I had was drugs and alcohol. That's a huge part of my life and story. For those of you who don't know me, I don't smoke anymore. I don't do any form of drugs, substances, any outside substances. I don't drink alcohol. I haven't in about 4 years now. And I'll definitely get into that a lot, but I'll quickly just say that, right? So I was uneasy my whole life, and I had this anxiety and depression, and I was 9 years old, and I walked into my kitchen, and there were a bunch of donuts laid out. I remember everything about this moment. There were Entenmann donuts. They were crumb topped. It was my favorite, and they're still my favorite, probably.
Love those crumb donuts.
They're amazing.
They're great.
But my dad and mom was in there, and me and my brother walked in, and they said, we're getting a divorce. And my world fell apart, right? I was 9 years old. I didn't understand. They got separated then. They got divorced about 2 years later. But my dad was very depressed. My mom was thoroughly depressed, and my brother was very angry. So at the age of 9, I made the subconscious decision that I have to take care of myself and my family. Because my brother's angry. He won't talk to anyone. My dad is sad. My mom's sad. And I put my feelings to the side to try and help them. I'm not saying, oh, look at me, right? But that's something that I shouldn't have probably put on myself because I didn't.
Big pressure.
Right. I didn't focus on myself, and I put way too much pressure on myself. And I made this decision subconsciously. I didn't like say this out loud to myself, right? But really what I did at the age of, right, 9 to 11, and I always talk about this when I do share my story, because I share my story often, is that I made 3 vital decisions subconsciously in that time period. One was that I didn't want anything to do with God. So I was raised by that woman Paz, that Filipino woman, and she used to be a nun, and she taught me prayer and all this stuff. So I was praying just because she told me to and all that stuff. But I remember crying my eyes out. I was in the closet of my bedroom. My parents were fighting. My brother wasn't home. And I prayed to a God I didn't understand. I said, God, please don't let my parents split up. And they did. So the first decision I made, I said, okay, I don't want anything to do with God. Then the second decision I made is I don't want anything to do with people. Because if my parents are going to, right, I felt, and this isn't remember, I deal with feelings, not facts. The feeling of the situation was abandonment. The fact of the matter was that they were both depressed and they weren't communicating well, right? They had a lot of communication issues, and they just, I don't know if they didn't love each other or they just grew apart, whatever it is. But I made it personal, and I said, okay, they're abandoning me. So I said, I don't want anything to do with people. I'm going to take care of myself, and I'll help people, but I don't need help from anyone. Then the third decision I made, and this is where the drugs really come in, is that I was having all this anxiety and depression, and my teachers suggested to my parents that I go see a doctor to talk to them about it. And so I went to see this licensed individual who said, Casey, you have this and you have that. And they diagnosed me with a million different things. And they said, I'm telling you that you have to take this substance. You have to take this pill every day, and it'll fix your problem. So, and that was the third thing, right? The third thing I subconsciously said to myself was, I have to take this outside substance and my problems will go away. So at the age of like 11 or 12, I said, okay, that makes perfect sense, right? I want nothing to do with God. I want nothing to do with people. I'm going to run my life the way I think I should, and I have to take pills every day to fix my problems. A licensed individual, a doctor, told me that.
Someone
so it's
of
not
authority.
Just me. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, and I'm paying to see this person. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to their advice, and I'm going to do it. I think I made those subconscious decisions at that very early age, and it it shaped my life experience to what it became, right? And I'm grateful for where I am today. Right, I've done a lot of bad things, and I've been through a lot of hard things, but I'm grateful for it all. I need to experience those bad things. Does that confuse you?
No, not at
No.
all. You had to go through the tough times, and tough times, in fact, are proven to build more character because you're having to deal with situations that a child shouldn't be taking on personally. Like, you're
Right.
not, as a 9, 11-year-old, supposed to go, oh, I'm going to take care of myself.
Right.
And when you do, you immediately jump from a learning standpoint as a kid to, oh my God, I have all of these responsibilities. I have to do all these things in order to survive. It's a survival mode.
Right.
And when you place yourself in that mental headspace, you're building up the strength to deal with difficulties later on in life.
Right.
And so it's very unfortunate that you put yourself through all of this, but it's also built you into the person that you are today. And
Right.
thank God for that. You know,
Right.
I don't believe in a God, but yeah, it's
Totally.
the saying.
I understand,
The saying.
right? It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
saying that matters.
Yeah.
No, and what I like to say, I need to experience the bad thing, specifically with fear, right?
Mhm.
Part of the human condition. I need to experience the fear for every reason you just said. But if I didn't experience the bad times, how could I appreciate, let alone acknowledge the good times? And I use the analogy, right? If I didn't experience what the dark was like, how could I appreciate or acknowledge the light? I wouldn't be able
True.
wouldn't
I
be
have a
able to,
saying just like
right?
that.
I wouldn't
yeah.
be able to recognize it and or appreciate it. Same thing with warmth and cold.
Mhm.
If I didn't experience the cold, how could I appreciate or acknowledge the warmth? And you can use a million different examples of that. But
Something
yeah.
not-
I would like to get the story from you of so you've got these pills as a kid,
Right.
but when was the move on a individual level to take responsibility? Now you're not going to, or you're still going to someone of authority, a practitioner, a
Yep.
psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, but now you're going to take drugs into your own hands and you're going to say, I'm going to self-medicate because
Right.
I know what to do because these will get rid of my problems. When did that occur?
No, totally. It was like very soon after. Basically, and for just so you guys know, because I don't know if you guys know, from the age, from that early age, and like 12 years later until I'm sober. Until I
Mhm.
got sober, I was seeing a licensed individual and taking prescribed medication. I'm not against prescribed medication. I believe it does wonders, and I think some people need to take it and should
Mhm.
take it. I just know that me living the way I live my life today and applying spiritual principles to my life is a better substitute for a guy like me. And so I haven't seen a licensed individual or taken medications or anything like that in the past 4 years either. But when I was 12, to answer your question, I was 12 years old, and my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my brother, and my father, we were all in Long Island having dinner together. We were just hanging out. And I'll never forget this moment or this day, because it was a huge day for me. It was the fall. I can even pinpoint. It was the fall of 2004.
Okay.
Fall of 2004. I'm taking you back 13 years. Fall of 2004. We're having this dinner, right? We all go downstairs, me and my cousins. We're watching Happy Gilmore. It was like our favorite movie. We would always watch it together
It's
at
a great
night.
movie.
It is. It's a classic. But I noticed my cousins, Chelsea, Jordan, and Jake, who were the oldest, they took out this clear bottle, this clear liquid. I didn't know what this bottle was, right? And remember, I'm like this scared little boy who's made these 3 subconscious decisions, and I'm full of fear, and I'm really angry and an emotional child. But I see them take this bottle, and I see them drinking it. And slowly, over a few minutes, I see them start to smile and laugh. And then Chelsea starts dancing, and Jordan starts laughing, and my brother starts making jokes. And I made the connection. I said, okay, they're drinking this clear liquid, which was Grey Goose. And they seem okay. They seem happy. They seem okay in their own skin. They seem comfortable. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I want that feeling, because I've never experienced that feeling in my life. I felt uneasy and not okay with who I am my entire life. So I want that feeling. So they all went to bed, and I took that bottle, and I went into my Nana's bathroom. And I drank my brains out. And I threw up all over the place.
Oh
And I
my
still remember
God.
so
Holy
and
shit.
I was 12 years old. And I cleaned it all up. And I woke up the next morning. And a normal guy, because I'm very far from normal, but a normal guy would probably be like, whoa, what the hell did I do last night? I woke up and I said, wow, that was amazing. I need to do that again. That's the type of thinking I have.
Wow.
Right? I got relief from an outside substance in the form of alcohol this time, and I said, wow, I need to do that again. I felt okay for the first time in my life, because when I took that bottle and I drank it, as gross as it was, I felt a warm, fuzzy feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I could take a deep breath, right? I took a deep breath. I said, I'm okay for the first time in my life. And so I made another subconscious decision. And I said, I want to chase that feeling for the rest of my life. I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. So at the age of 13, it was something else, right? And I'll talk specifics, sure. I don't mind people knowing. 13 was marijuana, right? 14 was MDMA. 15 was hallucinogens. Started taking acid and shrooms and all this stuff.
I remember all these periods. Sorry,
Yep,
keep
yep.
going.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, please. I know you guys remember. You were there for my craziness and my emotional.
First time I actually ever took acid was with you.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It
It's
was
fantastic.
Were we at my house?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in my bedroom. I remember.
It was so cool. You looked like a dragon when you blew those smoke rings. By the way, Casey is amazing at blowing smoke rings.
Oh,
You looked like
thank you.
a dragon blowing smoke rings into the ceiling light. Literally. Never
But
forget
yeah,
that.
I went through periods because when I was prescribed Adderall and benzodiazepines, and for those of you who don't know what those are things like Xanax, Klonopin, stuff like that, anti-anxiety medications. And I was taking a lot of antidepressants as prescribed, and I was like, okay, I made it a goal. I was like, I want to try everything. I want to see how much relief I can get and from how many different things.
Well, I remember also this is kind of how you are today, like I'd say with cigars almost, but like back in the day with weed and all these things, you like to know all the details. Casey was the most
100%.
knowledgeable guy about every drug. He very much.
It's 100%.
You made it a hobby almost,
Right.
You know?
When I get involved with something and I'm truly fascinated by something, I want to know as much as possible. Partly probably because of ego. I want to be that guy where people can look up to and talk to about things, and
Sure.
I have the answers. But a lot of it has to do with, right, I want to know what I'm doing. I was the very methodical, like I said.
Right.
I was, and again in quotation marks, the responsible drug user. But yeah, I would, and for what Ben is referring to, I had a $13,000 bong collection. I had 8 different bongs.
Right.
I always had a quarter ounce of different weeds labeled in like different jars, and I'm the same way with my cigars. I have 3 humidors at home. I have a locker at my workplace, and I have a cooler full of boxes. I have close to 1,000 cigars now.
Wow.
Yeah,
right?
and it's cool to have a hobby. I mean,
No,
I think
absolutely.
I'm happy that you found something.
Thank
that's,
you.
know,
That's not
a drug.
illegal
Yeah,
and
exactly.
not gonna bring me down, right? Bring my life down. But basically, I went through all these phases of taking different substances. 13 was marijuana, 14 was MDMA, 15 was hallucinogens. 16, I started doing some cocaine once in a while. And then I started mixing my benzos, right? I was prescribed Xanax, and I started drinking and taking benzos, and I found out that I would black out even harder and even quicker. And you guys didn't see me drink a lot, but it's because when I found the drugs, I stopped the drinking. But then at the age of 17, I started drinking heavily. I would drive around in my old car with a bottle of Jack in my cup holder. Right at the time, I was seeing Jasmine. You guys remember Jasmine?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I would drive around with a bottle of Jack, and I wasn't telling everyone about my drinking because I was ashamed. And then also at that age, I started getting into other things like opiates, specifically Oxycontins. I've seen a million people do them before. And I just didn't like the idea of, right, snorting these pills and stuff. But I saw my friend. I went to my friend, and I'll leave his name out of it because you guys will know who I'm talking about, but I don't want to blow up his spot. But I went to my friend's house, and I saw him smoking these pills. And I said, wow. And I'm obsessed with smoke, right? To this day, I love smoke. I smoke cigars, I smoke pipe tobacco, but I was obsessed with smoking things back then. So I said, you can smoke these pills? And I smoked it. And I said, wow. It brought me back to, right, the fall of 2004 when I was that little kid, and I got relief like I hadn't felt in years. And I said, wow, I'm okay again. So I smoked those pills every single day for 2 months until I think I went through about $50,000 in cash.
My God,
I was a big
Whoa.
drug dealer too.
Yeah.
For these guys know that, but the people who are listening don't know that. I went through $50,000 in cash, all the cash I had that I hadn't put away in savings. And one day I was out of cash, and I said, okay, I got to stop this, and I put it down, and I got the flu the next day. And I didn't know. I was like, why am I sick like this? Why do I feel so crappy? And nowadays, right now, I know I treat people with substance abuse disorders. I know that's called withdrawal. I was withdrawing, and I never experienced that. And I went to my friend's house. I was like, I think I'm sick. And he's like, no, dude, you're withdrawing. Like, here, take a hit of this. And I took a hit, and I was like, oh, okay. Instantly feeling better. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And that didn't scare me. Right?
Yeah.
Like a normal person, like I think they can recognize like, oh, I have a serious problem. I have like a serious habit. I was like, no, I'm just doing drugs. I'm just I work hard, I play hard. I'm just, I'm just having a good time. I'm just trying to feel good. I'm just taking a drink or taking a drug every other day or every day, and then
I could be totally wrong, but I feel like this relates right back to you as an 11-year-old. I think you said when you first went to that doctor, and it felt like it was okay when he was giving you
right
that prescription.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I took it to the extreme because I was self-medicated.
Sure. But this was like your excuse almost, like in your own head, right?
I absolutely could agree with that, 100%. And then 18 was something else. 18, I actually started smoking crack and doing things like DMT, and I was living in Colorado at the time for school, which didn't go well because I failed every single class. I went to class about 6 times in a year, and I was doing all these powerful stuff. And then when I couldn't get the oxys, I moved to heroin. And I found myself freebasing heroin and crack in my tiny dorm room. And then at the age of 20, I started smoking meth. And then a lot of things happened. I'll backtrack a little. And you guys remember this. It was July 2nd of 2011. I was going to prom weekend. Right, we go to the Jersey Shore. We rented out the Thunderbird Hotel, right? That was the hotel.
So,
yeah, the Thunderbird. That was like the seat. Like everyone would want to rent that hotel, and we rented that out. I was going to meet my girlfriend at the time there, and all my friends. And I pulled out of my complex, and 9 cop cars passed by, literally as I was pulling out. And I pulled over in my neighbor's driveway, Kelsey Bornstein's driveway, and I parked the car, and I called my stepdad, Mike. And I said, "Hey, Mike, what's going on?" And he said, "Cops are in our house. You tell me what's going on, Casey, right? Cops are raiding your room." And it was over, or I felt it was over. And I hid out in a hotel for 3 nights because a lawyer suggested for me to do that. And until at least my charges were placed and my bail was set, so I didn't have to go to jail. And it came out that I was facing 8 to 12 years for 7 different felonies. And I had a $100,000 cash bail, no 10%, no bond over my head. And so I turned myself in with the $100,000 cash, and I thought my life was over. And I asked myself, I truly asked myself, and I remember this conversation I had with my stepdad. He said, you got to look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're the man you want to be, because I've learned that mirrors don't lie. They always tell the truth when everything else doesn't. And I looked myself in the mirror, and I hated what I saw. Not enough, though, to stop, because I kept going. But I remember being handcuffed and in that courtroom with my parents in the back of the room crying their eyes out, asking what they had done wrong. And if you were there next to me, I would have told you that was by far the worst day of my life. The worst day of my life. I don't see it like that today. That was probably one of the greatest events in my life because it led to, right, me on a better path. So finally, after being called out by my lawyer, by my mom, by my dad, by my friends, by my teachers, the cops tried stopping me from graduating high school. And to be honest, the cops went about this the wrong way, right? They charged me with things I didn't really have. They exaggerated the charges, and that's why I got off with with a good deal considering what I was charged with. I got off with 5 years probation, and my license suspended for 3 years. And my family wanted to sue the police department, and during all this turmoil and all this craziness, my lawyer was just like, hey, let's just try and make a deal, and let's try and get you help because you obviously need help. So I took 5 years probation. I pleaded guilty to one felony of marijuana possession and distribution. And yeah, so I was put on probation, right? And I was really sick. I was 40 pounds underweight. I'm 6'1", and I was about probably 130 pounds. I was skin and bone, and I went to Colorado for school, University of Colorado at Boulder, and I partied more. I couldn't find oxys right away, so I was taking bars because my friends were dealing bars out there.
How were you? Sorry to interrupt.
Sure,
How
no
were you
problem.
allowed to leave if you were on probation?
So I did. Basically, it was my first offense, and the judge recognized that I had a serious drug problem, right? He didn't say there's just some bad kid who's dealing drugs and hurting people. He recognized I had a drug problem. So he was like, okay, like, you have to go see a doctor. And I saw this woman in Englewood, and then I'd keep contact with her. And then I saw the school counselor, and they would give the probation reports. And so I did something called out of state probation. Okay. And they didn't transfer it, but it was literally out of state, where I'd send letters, and the counselor at the school would send reports of how I was doing. And it was a nightmare, though. It was a nightmare. I went to Colorado. I kicked all the opiates and all the drugs out of my system. I started drinking often because I couldn't find anything else. I started taking bars or Xanax often, and then until I found it, right? I found oxys eventually, and I found black tar heroin, actually, and I found myself smoking that after a while. And I did a lot of crazy things in Colorado. I don't want to keep talking about like war stories just because I literally have a million of the crazy things I did.
So where did you go from? At what point did you start being sober?
What
was the step?
Well,
towards
basically,
being
I'll
sober?
keep going, but I don't want to. I'll give specific stories because they're funny of how crazy I was.
Yeah.
And you guys live them with me. You guys saw my craziness. Sure. But like, I was at the end of high school, after all this had happened, I was going into people's homes and robbing their jewelry. I was breaking into people's homes, some of our friends' homes. Not specifically you two, I never did, but some of our friends that we know.
Yeah, thief would say that, right?
No, he would. No, I've made it right with those people. I've let them know what I did, and I've apologized for it, and I paid them back. But I broke into people's homes, and I'd steal their mom's jewelry and pawn it off at the jewelry store in Tenafly on Railroad Ave, and I was doing crazy things. And in Colorado, there was this one time where I stole my friend Alex's car, Alex's car, and to go and get drugs. And I made up the story how my aunt was dying of cancer in Denver. And so God. That's why I took the car, and my phone died. And he was calling me for 4 hours saying, where the hell are you? I need my car. And I said, okay, I need to make up a story, right? And so I thought it was a good idea to pretend I got mugged. So I pulled over the car. I found a beer bottle on the ground, and I bashed the back of my head in until I started bleeding. Then I got some ketchup packets and put that on the back of my head to make it more exaggeratory. And then I took a cigarette and burned it on my face.
Jesus.
To pretend like I got mugged. And I went back to the house, and I was like, oh, look what happened. And I like put the fake tears on, and everyone felt bad for me. Did I tell you that story?
I just, after all these years, I didn't know that
you
didn't
know
actually get mugged.
Yeah, I
Jesus.
didn't. I'm sorry.
World-shattering news.
I felt so terrible for you. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Don't feel bad.
News.
I was just a maniac. And Alex knows that was fake. I apologized to him probably 2 years ago now, and we're close and we talk. But yeah, that's the type of stuff I do, right? To get relief. See, alcohol and drugs, I don't have an alcohol and drug problem. I have a me problem. My problem centers in my mind. I have an obsession, right, to feel okay, and I will do anything to feel okay, specifically with drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol is my solution. It is not my problem. I have alcoholism. I have addiction. Alcohol treats alcoholism, right, as a solution. And it's a good solution too, right? When I drink alcohol, when I do drugs, I feel good. I feel okay. I get relief from my condition called alcoholism or addiction, whatever you want to call it. And I get this relief. So I'll do anything to get relief, and I'll do crazy things like that story I just brought up to you. But basically, I left Colorado. My mom found out. I failed every single class. I went back to probation to report, and I wasn't sober. I couldn't stay sober. So I got something called a Wizinator. It's a fake penis that you attach to your hips. And I used it once. It worked. I used it the second week. It worked. And then the third week, I got caught by this big PO named Hercules. And he noticed I looked over my shoulder when I was peeing, and he said, "Wait a minute." And he came over and he grabbed it and waved it in my face. He said, "What is this?"
Oh, man.
And he pressed it. Literally, that's what happened. And he pressed this white button, and these cops rushed in. They arrested me. That's a 2nd-degree felony, trying to defraud a drug test. I was thrown in jail for a little. My mom was at the London Olympics at the time. I had to call her. She wasn't picking up, obviously. I called my dad. He bailed me out. But right, even though my house got raided, even though I saw my parents cry, even though all the pain I'd put my family through and my friends through, specifically you two, right? I was crazy. I have said some, not so much you. We got closer once I got sober, but with you, Ben, I was like cruel to you. Like
Sure.
a lot of my friends. I wasn't nice. I wasn't a nice person.
Well, me and you used to fight often.
We used to fight physically. We would physically fight. We would get drunk. We would get drunk or high, and we would brawl.
I think it was both our egos trying to wave our own dicks in the air. Yeah,
absolutely. But basically, I didn't care because I felt so uncomfortable that I needed relief. And I'm not saying that's a good excuse. It's not. My behavior was not excusable, but that's the reason for it, nevertheless. And so I got thrown in jail, and my lawyer and my family, they said, okay, to prevent right anything bad happening while you're on probation, right? There's just the first strike, because they saw that I had a drug problem. They said, you got to get treatment. So I went to rehab. I spent my 20th birthday. It was the summer of 2012. Yep, I spent my 20th birthday in rehab at a place called Silver Hill Hospital in New Canaan, Connecticut. It was a country club of a place, really nice. Nice women too. I ended up having like a rehab romance there. This girl,
against the rules too, right?
Right, that's very against the rules. Fraternization is against the rules. And she's actually, I talked to her probably a month ago. She just got married to this guy Dan.
Hey,
she's
congrats.
super
Good for her.
happy. Like
Yeah.
I'm close with her. She's an awesome person and a cool friend. But basically what I'm trying to say is I wasted my time there. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to get sober.
Mhm.
I'm a really manipulative person, and I'm really good with words. So I put on the smile. I learned the sober lingo. I spit it to them. I spit it to my parents. I said, okay, I'm better. And they suggested something called further treatment, where you go to a sober home. And my mom was like, okay, let's take you to a sober home. I was like, no, take me back to Jersey. So I went back to Jersey. And that same day that I got discharged, she found me a few hours later, passed out on my brother's bed with tinfoil on my chest. A few hours later of being 30 days sober, the longest I had been sober in 7 years, something like that. And that's how I ended up in Boston. I was supposed to go to Boston for 3 to 6 months to a sober home. And I ended up staying 10 and a half months in that sober home. I learned basic things too, by the way. I learned how to make my bed. I learned that I'm supposed to brush my teeth 2 to 3 times a day. These are things I forgot that I wasn't doing. I learned that I should probably eat 3 to 4 meals a day. I started going to the gym. I gained 50 pounds. I looked great. I felt great. But the second I got out of the sober home, I didn't really want it. So I went back out, and that's when I picked up my meth habit. And I was running around, drinking my brains out, running with bad people. I was actually running with the cartel in Boston for a little bit. And I was just doing stupid crap again. I was on probation this whole time. I was dodging drug tests for 3 months, and I came up dirty once, and my PO in Boston wanted to throw me in jail. But I continued to seek outside treatment out of the sober home, something called an IOP, intensive outpatient. And they were like, no, give him one more chance, try. And so they said, okay. The worst moment of my life, something that people who are sober like to refer to as bottoms, was early December of 2013. I was sitting in a walk and talk. It's this Chinese place. I was homeless at the time, actually. I was I was living at a 24-hour Dunkin' Donuts in this place called Cleveland Circle in Brighton, Massachusetts, and a walk and talk on Heath Street in Jamaica Plain. And I walked into the walk and talk. I went into the bathroom, got my stuff ready, took a hit, and I looked in the mirror and I started crying. I hated what I saw. And it was like that moment that my stepdad asked me to look in my mirror 2 years previously. And I hated the person I saw. And I picked up my phone and I went to call anyone. And in that moment, I realized that there was no one on this earth who wanted to talk to me. I was alone. And that was the worst moment of my life. Yeah, it was really crappy. And I walked out of there, and I remembered there was this guy, Jay, who's a very close friend of mine. I spoke with him last night. We speak regularly, and I see him regularly. And I said, Jay, I need help. So he lived down the street from the walk and talk. So I walked to his house, and I detoxed on his living room floor for 4 nights, right? I kicked the drugs and all this stuff. And my sobriety, right? I've been sober since December 24th of 2013. And I've been sober since then, and right, I've managed with the help of, right, the power of love and a lot of loving and caring people and taking right action and stuff. I've managed to stay sober, which has been a really cool experience, because a lot of people nowadays, especially, right, we have an opioid epidemic. A lot of people don't make it. I've buried a lot of friends. I have a friend, Dan, who passed away 2 Wednesdays ago. His wake was this past Monday. Then there's another kid I know, Arnold. His wake was 3 weeks ago that I was at. People are dying, right? So I'm very lucky to be alive.
Do you think that part of that, or our opioid epidemic, is stemming from the lack of attention that we're paying to kids, and then you want the kid to be better, and so you send them to a psychiatrist or whatever, someone of authority, and the person of authority says, hey, listen, here's an outside thing. And then you have all of these kids for a whole generation, our generation, the people that are younger than us, who are going through the same things that you went through of, I have this thing that someone of authority is giving me, and I'm going to take it, and this is what I'm going to do to deal with all my problems.
Right. I agree with that to a point. Being, right, a counselor who has tried and worked with people not only with substance abuse disorder, but with depression, with anxiety, with, right, personality disorders. I believe that medication is necessary for a lot of people, right? Like, but specifically, but these medications that people are prescribing for those types of things are things like SSRIs, like Lexapro, and anti-anxiety medication like benzodiazepines, and or a number of different things. In Boston, they're called Johnnies. There's this thing called gabapentin, or Neurontin, and people take that for mood stabilizing. And there are medications that I think are helpful. However, when it comes to opioids specifically, I think it has to do with, right, the leniency that doctors have prescribed that medication over time. When someone gets injured playing football in high school and they start taking those pills, then they get addicted to them, and then they can't kick it. I will say that there is a difference between the problem drinker or the problem drug user than to the alcoholic and the drug addict. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And the difference is, I'll give you an example. Little Joey gets into an accident and he's prescribed these medications, and he starts taking these pills every single day as prescribed. And then they say, okay, you got to stop, right? It's been 60 days of you taking these pills. You're good. You're healed. But he's going through withdrawal, so he needs to get more. So he gets heroin because that's the only thing that can make him feel better. And he uses heroin, and then he starts drinking and all this stuff. And then eventually he finds himself robbing people, and he gets caught robbing someone with a gun. And they say, okay, you're facing this time in prison, but maybe we'll give you a chance and go to treatment and get better. And so he goes to treatment, and he gets better, and he kicks the stuff. Right? And that's it. That's the problem drinker. That's the problem drug user. And I don't have the right to say whether someone is a real alcoholic or a real drug addict. It's a self-diagnosing thing. But that is an example of the problem drinker and problem drug user. The difference between little Joey and me is that when I did all that stuff and I was in that courtroom and I was facing 8 to 12 years in prison, and the judge said, Casey, all you have to do is stay sober and you won't go to jail, I start thinking about how jail looks. Okay?
Man.
I start thinking about how jail looks because
Yeah.
I'm not staying sober, right? Circumstances, that is the difference. External circumstances do not matter to the alcoholic or drug addict. External circumstances aren't going to change anything. My geographical location isn't going to change anything. Whether I'm going to jail isn't going to change anything. Whether I'm facing probation, whether I'm going to lose my wife or I'm losing my home, my family, right? I have that hole in the soul that I need to fill with some sort of alcohol or drugs. Luckily, I found something else, a spiritual solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
The power of love specifically. That's my solution today.
I love that you call it the power of love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's one of my teachers used that word, and I didn't know what to think of it, right? Because no offense to you guys, but I grew up with you guys, and we're ball busters.
Sure.
Where we, we call, can I curse?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, where we call each other, right, pussies and like all this
Yeah.
shit, and like, so I felt, and I'm not blaming you guys, but like I felt like I couldn't talk about my feelings, and I had to be a man, and like, right, and if I told you when I was 16 years old, hanging out, like, oh, what about the power of love? You would have been like, what the hell are you talking about, you loser?
Probably would have reacted differently than I
Right.
do today. For
Exactly.
sure.
But like nowadays, if I talk to someone about that and they laugh, which has never happened to me, honestly, I don't really care. But like back then, I wouldn't say something like that. So right, that's what one of my teachers has taught me, right? That there's this power of love that exists, and that if we act out of love and compassion toward everyone we encounter, alcoholic, drug addict, regular human being on the street, if we act that way, that is and specifically if we go further and try and be of service to those people, I'm going to be okay with who I am. If I do God's will, or this power, the power of love's will, really, that's what I believe it is, the power of love's will, and act out of love and act out of compassion toward all human beings, then I'll be okay. And you see, when I'm okay spiritually and I'm acting out of love, there's nothing for a drink or a drug to fix. I don't need alcohol. I don't need drugs anymore. I have a lot of miracles in my life. I'm not talking about white light experience miracles, nothing like that, nothing religious. But I have a lot of miracles in my life. Like I have my friends that I talk to that are willing to talk to me, and I have my family that are willing to talk to me, and I'm alive. That's a miracle in itself. And I have all these gifts. The greatest miracle in my life, though, is not, like a lot of people say, oh, the greatest miracle in my life, and this is not to knock them. I just see it differently. That's all. My perspective is different. There's no right or wrong. But how I see it is that, people say that the greatest miracle in their life is that they haven't picked up a drink or a drug for a year or 5 years or 10 years or however long it is. I don't want to be sober and miserable. See, when you take my drink or drug away from me, because it's my solution, which I talked about, it's not my problem. I don't have a drinking problem or a drug problem. I'm an answer drinker. I'm not a problem drinker. Like this guy Tom used to say to me, or used to say, you see, when you take that away from me, I get worse. I get more irritable, restless, discontent. I get like when I was 10 years old and I didn't have that bottle of Grey Goose yet in my life, and I didn't have outside substances, where I feel anxious and I feel paranoid and I don't feel okay and I'm depressed and I'm sad. Sometimes I want to kill myself and I want to kill everyone around me, really. I'm homicidal and suicidal. And basically, when you take that drink or drug away from me, I need a solution, and this spiritual solution has replaced it. One of my teachers taught me, or like has always said to me, if you take away a bone from a dog, you better give him a steak, right? If you take my drink or drug away from me, you better give me something back. Why would I stop drinking or drugging if it gave me that relief, if it melted the fear away? Because that's what it really did, melted the fear away. But why would I stop? And so I found something better through the power of love. So back to my original thought of, there are people who are sober and they're miserable. They're alcoholics and drug addicts, and they've been sober for a year, 5 years, 10 years, and it's great that they're sober. That's
Right.
awesome. But I want more than that, right? I want to be okay. It's easy to get sober. You can go to a detox and get sober. Staying sober is harder, right? Staying sober. And then the hardest thing for me is staying sober and staying comfortable. I want to be comfortable. I just want to be okay. I'm more than okay today, which is cool. But in the end, I just want to be okay.
You want that hole to be fulfilled
Right,
on your day to
right.
day.
And no amount of drinks or drugs or women or fancy suits or fancy cars is going to fill that hole. And I've tried all those things, and they don't seem to work. The only thing that seems to work is this power of love. But now, like I said, I rant and ramble a lot. But back to that super original thought of there's that guy with 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and say the greatest miracle today is that I have not picked up a drink in 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years. For me, the greatest miracle today is that I haven't wanted to. That is the greatest miracle. It's not that I haven't picked up a drink or a drug in 4 years. It's I haven't wanted to. That obsession to drink and drug and to get relief from drinks and drugs is gone. It's gone, and it can come back. I've seen it come back in people. I truly haven't obsessed in the past 4 years over a drink or drug. I've had 2 thoughts about maybe drinking or drugging in the past 4 years when life was really hard, but I haven't obsessed over it, and I haven't truly wanted it. And so that's the greatest miracle in my life today, that I haven't wanted a drink or a drug in the past 4 years when I lived my life searching for that. Right?
Definitely. And that makes me so glad to hear. And it's just great as a friend, and just knowing you all these years, just seeing you grow up as a person and be able to successfully make these, changes in your life and decide you want to actually turn around and help people, which makes me want to ask, what would you say to somebody who's going through what 14, 12-year-old you was going through at the time and doesn't know where to reach out, doesn't know how to feel about themselves? Well,
as a 14-year-old, if they were 14 or 12-year-old going through what I was going through, or
kid growing up having problems,
I would make sure that, right? And so this goes back to what Kyle was talking about, right? How we have this opioid epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Something that goes hand in hand with that, I just want to say quickly, is society. Society nowadays is all about relief, getting relief from outside things, whether it's
relief,
right,
yeah.
whether it's sex, with women, right? Women are degraded and used as objects, so people think that's a good way to get relief. People think watching TV is a good way to get relief. People think eating a lot or not eating at all, or hurting themselves, or drinking excessively, or using drugs, right? Society has placed in our minds that we need to get this relief and stimulate our dopamine receptors in our brain to get relief and be okay, and that's what's going to make us okay. I found that, right? Love and compassion toward all is a much better solution and gives me the most amount of relief. It's my steak today, right? As a dog, those things were my bones. This is my steak. Nothing compares to the feeling of me, and this is the reason why I try and help people. When I see the light come on in someone's eyes for the first time in their life, that is the greatest feeling ever. I don't help all these people. I try and help a lot of people. I don't do it because I'm a good guy or a nice guy. I do it because the feeling I get from it is better than anything I ever put in my arm, up my nose, or down my throat. I get a real high from helping people, right? Seeing that light come on in someone's eyes. It's a beautiful thing that I am able and blessed and fortunate enough to be able to experience, because most people, unfortunately, don't get to experience that. They just don't. So I'm grateful that I can do that, or try and do that for other people. But what you were talking about, what I would say to the 14 or 12-year-old, is, and what Kyle was talking about, right? How we have this epidemic, really because of society, is like, I would talk to him. I would just talk to him and see where he's at. I've learned that I can't force anyone to do anything, and I'm not the type of guy who's going to chase someone to be okay. I have a close friend right now in New Jersey who's drinking way too much, and he's not in a good place, and I want to talk to him about it, but I can only do so much, right? The one thing I've learned is that I'm not powerful enough. I thought I was invincible my whole life. I'm not going to get anyone drunk, but I'm not going to get anyone sober. I can only do so much, right? There's only this power of love that can do it, and I'll try and act out of love. But if someone doesn't want to be sober, then they're not going to be sober. It's really that simple. Sure. So to the 14-year-old struggling with that stuff, I would try and talk to him and educate him on drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And I believe that that's what we need for the opioid epidemic, right? That we need to go to the kids and have better education and set up, right, all these things where people know really what's going on, like awareness of this thing, because people there's a stigma to alcoholics and drug addicts, right? That they're homeless, that they're bad people. I don't believe they're bad people, by the way. I literally believe that they're just people who are sick and like hurt and in pain.
I agree with you.
Which, well, I'm going to use an extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Boston and there was bombings, the marathon bombings that happened in Boston, I was with this guy Mike, a close friend of mine, and I saw him crying, and I was like, "Oh, do you know someone?" Like, and he was like, "No, but it's just worrisome, right? There are all these victims, and it sucks, and I'm praying for these people." And I said, "Yeah, we should pray for these people, right?" And so we prayed together. We prayed for these people who are victims, and then he said, "And let's pray for the bombers." And I said, "Whoa, what are you talking about, dude?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 6 months sober at the time. He's like, "What do you mean pray for the bombers?" And he was like, "Well, Casey, you have to understand, these bombers are obviously sick. And these people are really hurt. They feel like they need to cause harm to other people, whether it's, right, a legitimate mental illness they have, or they're just really hurt, or they have a lot of pain. And out of that situation and that circumstance that happened, that thing that happened, and a lot of people will probably disagree with me. I don't really care, though.
I think it's an interesting perspective.
Right, is that those bombers aren't bad people. They are just really disconnected from this power of love. They're really disconnected of this power of love. They're not doing love's will, right? They're doing their own will, because every man and woman have free will. We can do whatever we want. They're really disconnected from this power, blocked off from this power of love. They're really sick and they're doing really bad things, but that does not make them a bad person. And so that's why I have that perspective on that.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But I don't know how we got to that topic. But
That's okay.
We're moving along.
Yeah.
But I just wanted
Just
to
having a
address, like,
conversation.
right, we have an opioid epidemic going on. People are dying on the streets every single day. I think it was like last year 76,000 people died from overdoses, and
Absolutely
and
absurd.
that's right. That's not alcohol related deaths either. And it's now surpassed the amount of people that die in car accidents. And it's a thing that we need to address. And I saw Trump the other day addressing it, and like in an address to the nation about, like, right, trying to win this war against the opioid crisis and epidemic. And it starts with, right, the pharmaceutical companies, and that's true. The pharmaceutical companies, a lot of them are corrupt. A lot of the people behind who made this up originally, when OxyContin was produced, they said it's a non-addictive drug, it's going to work great, and it was very addictive. Doctors, unfortunately, have always lied. And I'm not saying doctors are bad, but like, doctors have always lied. Back in the early 1900s, you could go to the dentist and get some cocaine for teeth pain.
Right.
And so people were doing coke, and then they were like, "Oh wait, coke isn't bad."
As doctors lying or doctors not knowing a lot of the time?
So, right, sometimes that may be the case of the misinformed giving misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're misinformed. However,
Like, who's to blame if the drug company told the doctor they did the test and these are non-addictive substances? You
totally,
know? What
totally.
The fuck is the doctor supposed to know?
Well, so maybe not the doctors,
Sure,
but maybe the drug companies. However, the doctor can recognize, right, if someone's
Definitely.
picking up a habit.
You're not wrong about
and
that.
and so I know plenty of doctors who right, have probably stopped prescribing because they've seen that it's a problem.
Mhm.
I personally know a few doctors in the past who illegally gave me drugs. Specifically in Colorado, there was one woman I would see, and she gave me a slip, and she said, "Sign any 2 things you want." And there was all these drugs, and I would always sign Xanax and OxyContin, and she'd give me 50 pills of each, and I'd pay her some cash under the table,
Oh
and that
my
was
God.
it. So
Wow.
there are legal doctors
Yeah.
out there all over the place.
Yeah.
But basically, we need to, and honestly, I don't get into politics. I don't get into, publicly at least, I don't talk about my opinions. But I will just say, only because we're already talking about it, that, like, right, we need better education for children on, like, what drugs and alcohol really do.
Well, I actually wanted to
and-
say one thing, and I'm sorry to cut off your
No
point, and
problem.
it has to do exactly with that, the better education for children with
Yep.
drugs, because, I mean, I just remember, I don't know if DARE still even exists, but I remember
DARE exists. Yeah, yeah.
it still
Yeah,
goes
it's
on.
a
I
thing.
believe so.
I remember how bad it was looking back at it, because they made everybody seem exactly how you said. All drug addicts are evil creatures who are,
Right.
you know what I mean? That was like the exact opposite of how they should have been explaining it. And I remember even as a kid having very different ideas of what drugs do to you than what they actually do. And I only found that out by experimentation on my own later on, which I think is the exact problem. Like, it needs to be true education of what's going on.
Of what's going on. Like, oh, that's what I was talking about, right? There's that stigma of alcoholics and addicts, right? That they're homeless, that they're bad people. That's how I got into the bad people thing. That all this stuff about what a drug addict or alcoholic should look like. And that's not the reality of the situation at all. A drug addict, right, an alcoholic is me. It's like the kid you guys knew growing up who's just full of fear and like doesn't know
mom.
right and doesn't know how to talk about his feelings about what's going on. And I think the education's great because people nowadays to this day they're like, oh, drug addicts are bad people, right? No, we're sick people and we just need treatment and we need help. It doesn't have to do, it's not a morality thing, right? Where we're like, I mean, we are selfish people. Like we are. I'm
Humans
selfish.
are selfish.
Right. That's true. It's human nature, unfortunately, nowadays. Where I am a selfish person at heart. But we need better education of truly what addiction alcoholism is, and what drugs do and why we shouldn't do them. And then with all that education, if people are still going to do them, especially if they're a drug addict or an alcoholic, sometimes they'll look for relief in that, and then we'll, give them treatment. But it's all about money. Treatment nowadays, there's a lot of like corrupt industry. Treatment industry can be corrupt in a lot of ways. I used to work for a guy who shall remain nameless, but he got caught doing insurance fraud, taking illegal kickbacks for money, and he was giving extra urine tests out, and then He had me I used to be the program director of a 28-bed facility, and he had me and a friend of mine, Eric, redesign the whole program. And Eric was doing most of the work because I was really lazy and irresponsible at the time. But we redesigned this program, we implemented all these things, and then he was like, "Oh, that's going to cost too much money. We can't do that." And he ended up going bankrupt and had to shut down. The treatment industry. There are a lot of great places, but there also a lot of corrupt places, because people are selfish, like I said, and people just want money. So we need better education. We need true treatment facilities that are doing the right things for the right reasons rather than the right things for the wrong reasons, because that's dishonest. And we just need, and I don't exactly know, like I said, I don't exactly claim to know what we
You don't have to.
need.
It's an
but
ongoing
this is what I
conversation,
think, right?
That
And this
we
is
figure it out,
right? And this is
through our
right.
conversations with each other
And
when we
this
actually
is-
talk about the
right.
issues.
And this is what I think would be helpful. That's all. So much better education, honest treatment facilities, and stuff like that along that nature. Yeah.
I have a final question for you. So, you've spoken about all the good things that you've been doing and how you've grown, and I just want to know, for your what do you see in the future? Do you want to go around spreading this message of the power of love and self-help, and how people can improve on themselves, or do you want to just focus on cigars?
Right. No, totally.
No.
I mean, like I said, I love working in the cigar business, but it's a hobby. Definitely a hobby. I love doing it, but it's not my main motivator. My main motivator is to write, like I said, see the light come on in someone's eyes. Like, that gives me the best feeling, and I continue to try and do that. I go out of my way, and I'm not trying to brag or boost my own ego, but just so you guys know, because I haven't really talked about it with you two specifically, I try and help a lot of people on a daily basis. I've devoted my life to helping people.
I feel that way.
Out of counseling, right?
Yeah.
Out of counseling. Within counseling, right? There's that certain clinical aspect which I've went to school for, right? Where I can try and help people too, but it's totally separate from when I'm trying to help people out of the power of love. Even though that doesn't mean I'm not going to act towards love and compassion towards those people, but it's separate. I want to keep spreading this message. I want to keep trying to help people, because as long as I'm sober and trying to help people, there's hope.
That's
You
great.
see, when people, I don't want to get emotional, but when people are in their worst spots, they seem hopeless. As long as I stay sober And if I keep helping people, you know, I can sound really good talking through this microphone to you guys. But it doesn't really matter what I say. Words are cheap. Words are powerful, but they're cheap. Action is everything. It matters what I do, not what I say. So if I keep doing this thing and trying to help people, I hope that people will see, rather than me talk about it and hear me, they're like, oh, that's a nice guy. And they see that I actually do this. They'll be like, okay, wow, he's doing something. Maybe I should do something too. It's like monkey see, monkey do, right? They're going to pay attention to what I do, not what I say. So that's why I keep doing this. And I hope to do this for the rest of my life. And I never want to forget that, for the sole purpose of people having hope. Because I've tried killing myself. I've overdosed twice. I should not be alive for the things I've done to people, but I am. And so that gives me hope. And I try and carry that hope to someone else. That's all.
We sincerely appreciate it, man. I mean, I want to say, like, I remember it was a few months back now. You had caught me at a party because I hadn't been going out so much. And you looked at me, I guess you knew that, like, everything wasn't going great in my life at the time. And you came up and you had, like, a serious talk with me and, like, asked me how I was doing. And I appreciated the shit out of that. I mean, that was awesome. And I feel like now, every time I call you, like, I don't have anything against this. It's actually great, but
that's like a counseling session?
Yeah, not that it's like, but
I'm not trying to.
I know, you pick up the phone and you have this counselor voice on before I can get you to, like, you give me the Ben, how are you doing, you know? And I'm like, Casey, it's good. And
that's
like,
just how I talk to people
I know,
a lot of times.
I could tell that now it's like something that's become part of your life because you're on a day-to-day. But it's funny, but it's also at the same time I do appreciate it.
Thank
you know,
you,
it's
man.
an awesome thing.
Of course. And I've talked to Kyle about it too, right? We've definitely had our serious talks too, and right. I talk to people in this calm, like, hey, how are you? Like, I'm doing very well. I'm doing quite well. How are you?
He puts on his formal counselor.
But if you know me, which you guys both know me very well, I'm still a goofball. I can be really silly, right? And like,
Definitely.
that doesn't mean I can't act out of love and being goofball at the same time. And I love doing both.
Sure.
But I just want to help people. You started with asking me, what do you want to do in life? I just want to help people. I want to see people with hope. I want to see people live rather than die. And I mean, we all die. That's a part of life. It's a part of the process. And I've accepted that, and that's okay. I don't fear death anymore. I truly don't. But I don't want to see people die, right, from so much pain. I don't want to see people die because they're in pain. I want people to be able to live as they're without fear, letting fear control them. And pain happens, but you don't have to suffer necessarily from the pain, and that's my experience. You don't have to suffer from the pain. You can do something about it today. It's like I always relate this to poker because you guys know I'm the big poker player.
Oh, yeah.
You're dealt, right, 2 cards in Texas Hold'em. It doesn't matter what cards I have. It matters how I'm playing the other people on the board, and that's kind of like life. It doesn't matter what circumstances you're dealt. I'm not saying life's easy. Life is hard. No one goes through life unscathed. But what are you going to do about it? That is the question, right? What actions are you willing to take? What are you going to do about it? Circumstances don't matter. Life is painful, and you can be in pain, but you don't have to suffer from that pain. You can try and grow from it and learn from it. And these are like some lessons that I have learned, but try and never forget. That's all.
If there was someone right now that was in pain, how would they be able to reach you? Do you have some sort of easily accessible contact for someone listening that's, not feeling themselves and wants to take a step in the wrong direction? How would they reach out to you?
I mean, I'm like an Instagram and Snapchat snob, so
Cool.
they could
What is it?
DM me there.
Do your plug.
But no, they could DM me there. I don't really talk about this thing on Facebook, right? That I'm a sober individual. I don't talk about that. I talk about it with friends, and I talk about it. There's this thing, right, where I'm not supposed to really talk about it, because it could hurt the main goal, and I'm being very vague and very general and kind of, right, like, I'm not being clear about it for a good reason, but there's this thing where I can't really talk about it. However, I always ask myself, I want to be of maximum service and of use to others around me. So I did this, right? I talked about this and opened up, because if someone hears this and they're in pain, I want to know that they can talk to me about it. So I am open about it. I'm not going to shout it from the rooftops for no reason, right? There's no reason to do that, but I'm open about it. Because I never want to block off someone from thinking that they can't ask me for help. And if someone wants to ask me for help, right, they literally give me a call. They get my phone number. They contact me through Facebook. They contact me through some way. I get like 5 to 10 phone calls a day. I talk to a lot of people, and I call a lot of people for help too, for myself. But I get a lot of phone calls every day. People Facebook message me that I've never talked to across the country, and I talk to them sometimes. So there's a million ways to contact me.
So what is your Instagram handle? What is your Facebook
You really
handle?
want me
Well,
to?
that's your plug. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
That way people can reach
Well,
out
if
to
you
you.
feel comfortable having people reach
Yeah,
out.
Sure. I don't
out.
care.
Yeah.
I mean, you can contact me on Facebook, right? Casey Mann. That's my Facebook name. My Instagram name is Casey Moan. It's COSEY_Moan MONE. My Snapchat is Casey Man, CASEYDAMANN. Yeah. I feel like I'm
Do you have a
promoting
Periscope
myself.
No,
now.
called
perfect.
Rorchonis?
God.
Or?
No, nothing with Rorchonis. That was like a saying, for those of you who don't know, that was like a saying that I don't want to give credit to the wrong person and not give credit to the right person. So it was a saying that me, my friend Matt Chapelsky, my friend Zach Wiesner, Imri, Ori, who's in the other room, right? These are sayings that we always used to say growing up, and it was just like a funny thing, that doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to us when we say it. It's like oh, we have to call Fuva, right, the sushi place, and they just closed. Oh, Rorchonis, like it's, oh man, like that sucks. That's what Rorchonis means.
Casey, man, it's been a fucking pleasure having you
Absolutely,
on.
it's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, man. I think you had a very compelling episode. I think we all enjoyed listening to what you had to say. And I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Disconnection podcast. And please like and subscribe and check out our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We'll be happy to see you again. I've been Ben.
I've been Kyle.
Thank you, guys.